What's going on, everybody? Welcome. While we're waiting for everybody to join in, why don't you go ahead in the chat box, open that up, switch it to everyone so that we can all see you and let us know where you're dialing in from. And I'm
Aaron's
curious.
first. Does Aaron get a special award for being the first one?
I think there's a setting where it either will admit them alphabetically or admits people on a first join.
I'm saying he was the first chat. He was the first
Oh,
typing in.
oh, there we go. All right. Well, you're ahead of me there. Yeah, that's welcome, Aaron. See, we got people from all over. I'm also curious. I'd love to see who all is already part of Kyle's Remodelers on the Rise group, and maybe even the VIP club as well. Let's see who he's got representing from there. I see people still joining in, so we're gonna give it just like one more minute here.
I see some familiar faces in the attendees.
Oh yeah. Now be sure to switch it to everyone. I see a handful of y'all haven't followed that particular instruction there. I don't know why we can't get it to just default to everyone. It makes it easier for us to have to not have to switch back and forth and whatnot. But yeah, excited to see all these familiar faces as well. I'm not part of any of those, Aaron. We will have to get you hooked up with that. Got Karen though, she's part of both. Got Adam.
No, Eric, I always 5P, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And so I put one of that is putting my phone into do not disturb mode. But I couldn't help but look at the text from my wife from a couple minutes ago. She just got home and she said, "Help, double exclamation mark. There is a baby raccoon laying in the driveway."
Oh no.
She wants her knight in shining armor to come and rescue her, but I am 5 minutes from the house and I have a webinar to conduct here with you.
Yeah, I don't know how it always seems to be that my wife just starts blowing me up every time I get into a webinar as well, even though I've told her beforehand, hey, I'll be busy from here to here. And then, the couple times I text her back, is you need anything? She's like, no, I was just checking in on you or whatever. And it's like, all right, well,
There we go.
yeah.
Baby raccoon. I hadn't heard that one.
All right. Well, I think looks like we've got most people are in here now. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Today, we're going to be talking about the 6 financial dials you can adjust to dial in your profits. And we've got our guest speaker here, Kyle Hunt. Very excited to have you on, Kyle. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Jason in the chat, can you shoot the coon from your window, Kyle? I do not work from my house. I'm about 5 minutes from the house. And even if I were, it's the baby, Jason. It's a baby.
Yeah. Let's not shoot any babies today. A couple things before we get going, though. We've got just a reminder here. If you're not part of the JobTread Pros Facebook group, it's a great place to be. The screenshot's actually, I see, a little bit outdated. We're over 3,000 members now, but it's also a great way to interact with Kyle. If you're not part of his remodelers community on Facebook, he is part of the JobTread Pros group. So, any questions after this webinar that you want to throw out there to the community, feel free to do that. You can tag Kyle. He is in there as well. So definitely hop in there and yeah, let's connect that way. Also want to give a little shout out here. So we've got our second JobTread Beginner Boot Camp that will be at the end of June. It's June 27th and 28th, I believe. So it's a 2-day, in-person workshop where you're going to be going through, all of the beginnings, kind of the basics, getting up to speed very quickly in this immersive experience, here at the JobTread HQ. It's going to be a great way to meet others who are in a similar situation, kind of just getting up and going. Now, we have had some veterans join us as well at the last one, which is awesome, to have them there. But we do have a special event that Thursday night. We just got word that we were selected to host the Dallas Association of Builders monthly social event. So we'll be able to have kind of the full-blown event here at our office as well. Food, drinks, a couple hundred people will come in. So it's a great opportunity just to network with more builders, contractors. Very excited though for you to come in and be able to learn, very quickly about JobTread, get up to speed, bring out your estimators, project managers. Our goal is to help you get up and running as quick as possible with this boot camp. So if you'd like to learn more, we've got more information on our website or directly in the marketplace. We also just announced JobTread Connect 2025. So it will be in January again. It's a 3-day user conference. This year we're going to have even more ed sessions, opportunities to learn, a lot of different keynotes. We've got roundtables, networking. Last year Kyle brought the fire on stage, awesome talks, from a lot of, industry professionals out there, as well as from, other builders and contractors. We're really excited about this event. I'm curious out in the chat who all was there last year. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know. We'd love to see everyone coming back out. We just released the early bird tickets as well. So, again, definitely want to snatch those up before they're gone. Really awesome, really fun event though. We spend a lot of time and effort to put this together. We'll have, again, the evening events, at a couple different places around Dallas, but we take care of everything. All of your food, all of your drinks, all of the entertainment, everything is included in this ticket. So I definitely recommend, if you already know you're coming back, grab those tickets. The early bird price is $4.99. It does go up to $5.99 after those are gone. So, want to see everybody out there. I've just seen so many awesome stories about how this has really made a big impact, just being able to come and spend a couple days investing, in yourself, in your skills, both JobTread related and just general business, sales, marketing. We have a lot of coaches come out, our accountants and bookkeepers, a lot of people out in the marketplace will be there. So it's a great event. Love to see everyone come out. And we've got, let's see, what's my next slide here? Oh yeah, builder stories. So I think we just launched today our 44th, thank you, Siri, our 44th episode of Builder Stories. If you're not following along on that, you can catch us on all of your main, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can just go directly to builderstories.com, but it's a great way to hear other successful builders and their challenges, how they have been able to build their businesses, and again, we have people in various stages of their journey. So it's just a great way to learn from others and kind of hear, how they've been able to achieve success along the way. Tune into that. Love to have everyone subscribe, like, share that out. And if you've got a story you'd love to share, you're willing to come on and again, give the raw, hey, here's how it's going. Here's what's working well. Here's not what's working. I'd love to have you on. You can apply to be on the show as well directly at builderstories.com. And now, without further ado, I get to introduce a good friend of mine, Kyle Hunt. He is the owner and the extraordinaire behind Remodelers on the Rise. Provides business coaching services. He is just, all around awesome guy, knows a lot about, financials, marketing, sales, leadership. This guy has a plethora of knowledge. So we're very, very fortunate and excited to have you on here today, Kyle, to dive into some of these, these metrics that, can help other remodelers. Obviously you've been at this for quite a while. You've worked with hundreds and hundreds of remodelers out there and have tremendous experience to share. So welcome to the webinar, and yeah, let's hear it.
Let's get into it. Thank you for having me. And I was at last year's, like you mentioned, I was bringing the fire. I didn't have actual fire. He was saying my words and my energy level, while not as high of energy level as Eric, I do bring some energy. I was throwing hats. I was throwing swag into the audience. And hopefully, yeah, I look forward to being back next year. So we're going to talk about 6 financial dials, and I just wanted to talk about this kind of dial analogy before we get into the first one. This dial analogy, if you were to kind of just envision in your business overall, there's all kinds of different dials that you can be adjusting, that you can be moving up, that you can be moving down, that you can be dialing in. And if we were to look at kind of the dashboard of your remodeling business, your contracting business, and we were to focus on all the dials related to financials, there's probably there's several dozen of them. And this idea, for example, of wait, there's a dial of total revenue, all the dollars that are coming in at the top of your profit and loss statement. It's marked somewhere, it's at that level. You can either dial it up, it might be getting dialed down. And all of a sudden, as you start to make adjustments to all of these important dials, all of a sudden, really strong improvements in your overall financials start to happen as you just start dialing in each of these. For some of you, you need to make some major adjustments to some of these dials. For some of you, it's more, you know what, I've made great progress on this and this and this. I just need to make some small tweaks and some small improvements. So as I've been coaching, in particular remodelers for going on 16 years, I've kind of identified what I would consider some of the most important ones. And my goal for today is not for you to necessarily hear a bunch of new ideas and get overwhelmed by a bunch of new stuff, but perhaps give you clarity on seeing these in a new light, maybe give you some motivation, maybe give you some encouragement. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a clear action step or two, maybe a next right thing for you to implement and to dig into because of this webinar. So that's the goal. That's the goal today. So we're going to start with the first one here that I'm going to cover. Oh, and Jason said Kyle was one of the best presenters. Well, Jason, even if you're considering like one of the best presenters being in the top half, I will take that. I appreciate that.
We heard that a lot though, Kyle. So just
Okay.
kudos
All
to you,
right.
man.
All right. I appreciate it. I mean, you had me. I took talking at JobTread last year very seriously because it was the first time in my 16 years of speaking that somebody asked me, "What do you want for your walk-up music?" The amount of time and energy that went into the walk-up song was ridiculous. But man, if you have walk-up music, you better be bringing the fire. All right. So dial number one, the estimating dial. What I have on the screen here is a screenshot from somebody that's in my VIP club. And one of the exercises I had them do was to do a little bit of a financial recap, to look at the last several years of their overall financials, and then answer some questions based on what they were seeing. One of the questions says this: what are concerns you see in your numbers as you review year by year? And this person wrote the following: I'm not at all happy with our 2023 gross profit. I can trace a lot of it to hasty estimating due to being overloaded. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit today. We weren't getting fixed prices from our trade partners, AKA we were kind of guessing, which led to slippage. We weren't thinking through the scope of work as well as we should and missed things. And another part they wrote, I was overly optimistic in the number of labor hours estimated, meaning they were a pretty optimistic estimator. You know, when I was out in the field, I was able to do this in 6 hours, therefore. And a lot of times we are optimistic estimators. And all of a sudden, instead of the project coming in at the 100 hours you quoted it at, all of a sudden it's 120, 130. That is not ideal. So this first dial is related to the estimating process, the estimating system in your business. And just a few, what I'm going to do on each of these is just get you thinking, do a little teaching, get us contemplating what are some adjustments that we can make to each of these. So when I think about the estimating dial, the first thing that pops up here, it says, do you have everything in there? When you are thinking through this kitchen remodeling project, do you have everything in there? And if you are starting from kind of a haphazard scope of work, if you are kind of just thinking about writing out and listing out and then kind of putting it into JobTread, chances are you're going to be forgetting some things. When it comes to dialing in your estimating dial, I want to emphasize the use of templates. Do you have a kick-butt kitchen remodeling template? Have you not only taken the template that maybe JobTread gave you or maybe you got from somebody else, but really spent the time to customize it, to make sure it works for you? Every 10 minutes you spend on estimating is especially in estimating templates, is some of the most valuable time you can spend in your business. Estimating is where a lot of money is made and where a lot of money is lost. You have everything in there. Another one here, accurate estimate of labor hours. When you're looking at this estimate that you're creating, is that an accurate estimate of the labor hours it's going to take? And I put over there on the right in beautiful orange, do you know? Do you know if that's the case? I have a lot of clients who bring in a project manager or bring in a lead carpenter to have them review a very important estimate. Here's what I put together. You see the scope of work, you see the plans. Before we finalize this, before we present this to the client, I want you to take a look. How do you feel about that? Accurate estimate of labor hours. Have you actually looked closely at the last 3 or 4 or 5 of those projects that you've done and seen how your estimated labor hours compared to your actual labor hours? Do you know? if that is an accurate estimate of labor hours. So maybe that's something you need to dial in. I wrote in the third bullet, it's almost like I repeated it. Do you have everything in there? I repeated it for emphasis sake. The fourth one on here, do you have a clear process to follow? I just did a lesson yesterday with Audra with LTD Builders down in Florida. She's part of one of my peer groups. And she just went through step by step from the time the design and development agreement is signed to the time that she gets the plans going and all the steps involved there, to the time that she schedules to have some trade days with the most important trades that are on that project. And then step by step, how she implements the template, how she updates it, how she develops the scope of work. She has a clear process to creating her estimate. And my challenge for you is, can you say, I have a clear process to follow when it comes to my estimating? And if not, what is the next right thing you could do related to that? Second to last one on this one, is the scope of work detailed and clear? Details, details, details. I was looking at an estimate earlier in the week of one of my clients in South Carolina. His first name's Terry. This isn't a positive story, so I won't use his last name. But I'm looking at his scope of work, and the amount of detail in there is piddly. We will just use the word. Eric, I didn't know I was going to use the word piddly today. I don't know if I've used it in all of 2024. But the level of detail was piddly, meaning there is going to be questions that pop up that the customer might have. And guess what? If the customer says, I thought this was included, and you go to your scope of work and it's not really clear, chances are, to keep that client happy, and because you didn't get into the details, who's going to be eating some gross profit dollars and whose cost of goods sold is going up on that project. So when you are dialing in your estimating dial, perhaps it's getting into the details of your scope of work. And that last one, do you have fixed price bids? If I have a pretty sizable project and I have a plumber, I have an electrician, my tile company, my drywall company, making sure that you're actually getting fixed price bids from them is a great way to protect your gross profit dollars. But Kyle, they don't get back to me. But Kyle, Set the expectation. Let them know how important it is. Give them a deadline for it. Follow up consistently and continue to work towards improving that. So there's some things related to the estimating dial. A few other comments on this one, the estimating dial. First one says, watch your capacity. I find that very often estimating is a bottleneck in a lot of businesses. And if we continue to say yes, 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 yes to more and more estimates, pretty soon you're at 120% capacity and you can't keep it in front of you. You can't get it done. Watch your capacity and perhaps start to work towards a plan to make sure you're not taking on too much estimating at any given time. Maybe space it out a little bit more, or figure out a way. Maybe there is a part-time hire that you can make that could help you with some of the estimating work. Maybe there's somebody else on the team that could start to take a little bit of the estimating or follow up with trades, etc. load from you. Watch your capacity. Set self-imposed deadlines. When we have something that we need to get done that we're kind of putting off, it is amazingly helpful to call that client and say, hey, I'd like to present our full detailed estimate and proposal to you. Can we schedule a meeting? Here it is today on Wednesday, June 12th. Can we schedule a meeting for next Tuesday, June 19th? June 17th. June 17th, we're stuck on it. June 18th. Yesterday was my anniversary. June 11th plus 7 days, 18th, next Tuesday. Even if you don't have that proposal done, if you've given yourself a deadline, you will figure out how to get it done. Self-imposed deadlines are your friend. Maybe that's a dialing in of your estimating dial. Not to steal it from Nike, but just do it. Just do it. Eat your frog. Most important thing to get done that you're most likely to put off, eat your frog. Get it done. And part of this is also mindset. Somebody in my Remodelers community group, his name's Ron Lowe. He said, you know what? I've decided not to whine and complain and mope when I have estimating work. I don't love doing it. I'm not going to say I love doing it, but I have decided to flip it and say, you know what? It's time to go print some money, because that's what estimating does for you. So that is the first financial dial, is related to estimating. I gave you a little rapid fire. There's probably more rapid fire in the estimating one than the other 5. But can you please, if you would be so kind, to the several dozen of you that are on here, I see 60, 70 attendees. Can you please comment in the chat box, what is a takeaway or a dialing in related to estimating that you are going to take action on?
You know, Kyle, while we're waiting to get those comments in there, I just want to reiterate yesterday during a webinar I was doing, we had two JobTread pros who were walking through their estimating process and how they did it. And one of the gentlemen said the best thing that he implemented, you know, was when he goes out on site, he schedules the follow-up meeting for when he is going to come back and when he is going to have the full estimate ready to go. He said that is the biggest thing that he has ever done. It forces him to hold himself accountable, and it has forced him to make sure that he delivers that estimate and that he gets the work done before that date. And it just, you know, again, holding himself accountable, but it's scheduling, it's setting the expectation for the customer when he will be back with the details. And he said it's just the biggest transformation he's had was
Bingo.
starting to do that.
Clint wrote that. Schedule a proposal presentation meeting with the customer to keep you accountable to the deadline. Yeah, book that next meeting before you leave the current meeting. And we got lots of action steps already. I'm loving that. But we're going to keep going. 6 dials to adjust. Number 2 says total revenue dial. This is the quote from, I almost said illustrious, but that seems lack humility and ego, and it wouldn't be funny. But this comes from the illustrious Kyle Hunt, these quotes. It says, your markup and margin is fine. This is me talking to one of my clients recently. Your overhead expenses are reasonable. Your job costing is looking good. This is good. Everything's looking good. And then I said, you need more revenue dollars coming in. Sometimes our markup and margin and what we're charging is fine. Your overhead expenses are reasonable and not out of line. You're looking at your job costing and what you're expecting in gross profit dollars and cost versus the actual is pretty solid. You don't have a lot of slippage. For some of you, you need more revenue dollars coming in to feed the business. So when we think of the total revenue dial, what is your monthly revenue goal? If you're aiming for $1.5 million of revenue for the year, that comes out to $125,000 a month. I have several clients. I'm thinking of Diamond Hill Builders, JobTread user, as a matter of fact. I'm thinking of Hamtel Construction, they're JobTread users. I'm not trying to do this. If you go into Chris Howlett's at Diamond Hill, if you go into Hamtel Construction with Paul and Dave, if you go into Tony Hughes's office up in Minnesota and you go to one of their walls, you will see a sales thermometer in each of their offices. In Chris's case, they have a monthly sales and revenue thermometer. In Tony's case, he has an annual revenue goal, similar to the one you see on the screen. Dave and Paul, this was them last year. Guys, everything's looking good. You need more revenue dollars coming in, and then everything's going to click wonderfully. And they did it, by the way. Sometimes having a sales thermometer where you're starting to track and measure this important dial, this important metric, is very helpful. The second thing there says, don't freak out on the monthly. Construction and remodeling, it can ebb and flow. Sometimes summers are when we really start to make more dollars than in other times of the year. Don't freak out on the monthly revenue. If you're not hitting that number, think quarterly and really pay attention to that quarter, that 3 months, or here we are through 5.5 months of the year. I want to really know through those first 5 months, are you feeling good about the revenue dollars that you've brought in? Are you behind? Are you on pace? Are you ahead? You should, as a professional business owner, know that and have an opinion on that and have clarity on that. Another thing to keep in mind with total revenue, you can sell it, but you also need to produce it. Total revenue for most of you is not necessarily, I went out and sold $1.5 million of revenue. That's good, but The revenue part of that may only be the deposit. The revenue part of that may only be a piece of that. So the total revenue is not just sales, but it's the dollars that are coming into your bank account. That's what's showing up at the top of your P&L. So there's that never ending tension between kind of sales and production that you will always kind of be ebbing and flowing with in your business. And just as a reminder, this feeds your whole business, making sure these dollars are coming in. A couple other thoughts on this. Should we just dial this up? Is more sales and revenue always better? The answer from this experienced coach is no. Sometimes we need to dial down total revenue. Sometimes we need to kind of keep it where it's at. Other times we need to dial it up. Sometimes you find a nice sweet spot in your business where you have your overhead expenses at a certain level, you have your pricing at a certain level, you're feeling kind of in control of things. One thing I love about the remodeling and construction industry is there's not one right way to do this. Success can be found in a lot of different approaches. But when it comes to the total revenue, you should have a strong opinion about this for your business. When you're looking at your numbers and everything that goes into it and your goals and your ambition for your business, you should have a strong opinion about the total revenue dial. Okay. This is a little bit of a rhetorical question. You can type it in, but we're going to keep cruising. What do you need to do with your total revenue dial? Do you need to dial this one up? Do you need to dial this one down? You want to keep it about the same? And why? Be thinking about that. So the first dial I hit on was the estimating dial. The second one was the total revenue dial. We're going to do the third one, and then we'll take a quick little siesta and take a couple questions. Okay, 6 dials to adjust. Number 3 is the gross profit dial. Oh, I love this one. The gross profit dial. Gross profit, what you have after paying all of your cost of goods sold, but before paying your overhead expenses. I have total revenue coming in. I have all of my cost of goods sold, in-house labor and materials and trade partners. And then I have my gross profit. Underneath that, I have my overhead expenses and net profit, my gross profit dial. Take a look at this one. This remodeler has $2 million of revenue, of sales coming in. This should say revenue. Get ready in the chat box. I'm about to ask you a question, everybody, and I want it quick. Cost of goods sold, $1,340,000 comes out to 67%, which leaves them with a gross profit of $660,000. That comes out, this 33, that is a 33% gross profit margin. And this math comes out to a 1.49 markup. Ah, interesting. I'm about to put just a quick link in markup and margin. I just put it in the chat box, just a little link to a little PDF that kind of explains markup and margin. If you're fuzzy on that, go ahead and download that, print that sucker out. My question for you in the chat box is, how do we feel about this? How do we feel about this? Give me a sentence or give me some words. How do we feel about this? This gross profit, this dollars, this margin, how do we feel about it? Jason is puking. I don't know if he's puking or if he's puking money. It's green. Okay, interesting. It depends on what the overhead is. Ah, Beth. Clint says good. Interesting. My business is not enough, says James. Pat says decent. Okay, that gave me enough fodder for what I was going for. It's kind of a trick question, and some of you nailed it. I mean, it depends. If I told you that this remodeler was selling everything at a 40% margin, how would we feel? We got 7% of margin of slippage. Holy cow! What would that come out to? If I've got $2 million of revenue, Eric could probably do this in his head. I need a calculator. This should be $800,000 of gross profit. I've got $140,000 of slippage. These numbers stink. That would be a question. If I have an overhead expense of $700,000, I hate this number. This is not good. I might be okay with the percent over here, but the dollars ain't working for me. I'm losing money. So the answer to that question is it depends. It depends on your business. It depends on how you're doing your pricing. It depends on these factors specific for your business. I have clients that have a 25% profit margin and they're making a crap ton of money. I have clients that are at 42% gross profit margin and they are squeaking by. I have clients that 33% gross profit margin, they're sitting on 15% net profit. There are so many different ways to slice and dice and make money in this business, and there's equally, I suppose, as many ways to lose money. You need to have a handle on your gross profit dial. What is your gross profit margin goal, percentage goal? And the biggest part of that is why. Tell me why. Tell me why that's your goal. And then what is your gross profit dollar goal and why? Right? If I'm talking to somebody and they say, look, I'm at a 33% I'm selling things at a 35% gross profit margin. I'm kind of budgeting everything around a little bit of slippage happening, and I'm kind of expecting my gross profit margin to come in at 32%. And based on my total revenue goal, which I feel very confident in, going into this year, I already have 50% of my revenue sold, signed, sealed, delivered. I've got a good amount in design development that is another 30 or so percent of my year. I'm feeling really comfortable and confident with that. And I've also already went through my overhead expenses to know that if I hit that 33% gross profit margin goal at that total revenue, I will be able to easily pay for my overhead expenses, which, by the way, has a new hire in there, and be sitting on an 8% net profit. And I would feel great about that. That's the type of conversation that we need to be having as business owners related to your gross profit dial. Because what you just heard there is somebody that has thought through their numbers. They're dialing this in. They've spent the time. They are just as good with the numbers side of the business as they are on producing the awesome results that you guys give your clients. That's what so much of this is about, is being just as strong on the numbers side, the gross profit dial. So I'm gonna pause here. You see that time check, Eric? It says 3:30. It's 3:32. We're doing pretty good. Eric, I feel like this is several topics that are near and dear to your heart. Do you want to offer a comment or two on what I've covered so far? And then is there a question or two that you guys want to type in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just very important that people understand the difference between markup and margin. You know, it's just so important, and I realize that, you know, to mark something up, it's an easier calculation. You're just multiplying, you know, whatever your costs are times, you know, 1 point, whatever kind of percentage you want to mark it up, you know. But like that metric is not gonna live on beyond you just calculated the price by marking up your cost. You know, using margin to calculate your price is going to ensure that you're including that percentage of profit in the price. You know, and so at the end of the day, like it's just very, very important. And that's why, like with JobTread, we really heavily want you to think about things in terms of your profit margin, you know, and not markup. It's a little bit harder. You know, you're dividing instead of multiplying, but it's so important that you really understand that. And that's what you're going to be able to benchmark your job, you know, and your performance across the entire, you know, life cycle of that job. And ultimately in your P&L, in your QuickBooks, you're going to see your gross profit margin, you know, that Kyle's been talking about. Yeah. So, you know, really understand the difference of those and make sure that you are taking, you know, the right, you know, amount into account here, not using markup, because that's not going to get you your profit margin.
Yeah, good. So in the chat box, I would like to take a minute and, hey, I've covered 3 of these dials so far. We're cruising along. Can you type in a takeaway or something you're doing action wise? What's kind of a next right thing that you're going to be doing related to one of these 3? If you could type that in, I'll give you a minute to type. Yeah, Beth, I want to come during the Q&A time. We'll come back and touch on yours. Okay, estimating a job trend. Jason, thank you. What are some other actions that you guys are going to take as a result of what we covered so far? That's really important in this.
Couldn't agree more with you, Kyle, that like every minute you spend trying to really dial in your template is what's going to just, pay itself over just numerous times and time savings and cost savings and accuracy later when you're actually in the field doing the estimates and needing to churn those out. It's
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
important that you spend that time, setting those up.
Good. Clint said sales thermometer, visualizing where we're at compared to where we need to be. Awesome. Clint, there's something weird about it. It just, if that's a need of really paying attention to that metric, what gets measured gets improved is something else that's important. Sometimes when you have a sales thermometer, oh yeah, I made some money, I get to go in and fill in the sales thermometer. I know it sounds silly, but it's legit. Pat, come up with better processes, excellent. Amy, estimating templates, wonderful. Lot of estimating related items, good. And can somebody also just type in, I'm going to know my gross profit really, really well and have answers to the questions that you were asking, Kyle? That would make me happy too. Okay. 6 dials to adjust. The fourth one, job costing dial. Job costing dial. What is my expected cost and gross profit? What is my actual cost and gross profit? Talking about different dials. We hit on estimating, total revenue, gross profit. Now I just wanted to sit in job costing for a couple minutes here. This is a good time to kind of define slippage and grippage. So if I'm looking at on my kitchen remodeling project and I look at the demo phase and I have an in-house team of people that help me with that, and I quoted 40 hours to do that work. And my cost was X amount, and it ended up taking me 50 labor hours to do that work. And that was a higher cost. What we have there is we have slippage. You can see it makes us frown. That is the frowny face. Okay. For each area of your estimate, for each area of the project, when you look at your expected cost and gross profit versus your actual cost and gross profit, how are you doing? That is a huge question. If I am looking at the plumbing line of my project and I had estimated a cost of $3,000 and I get the final bill from a trade partner and it says $2,500, I have $500 of grippage. I made a little bit more in gross profit than I was expecting. Job costing, job costing, job costing. Job costing dial is where I start all of my coaching. I've worked at this point with hundreds of remodelers, and somebody asked me not too long ago, and they're like, "Where do you usually start?" And I'm like, "Man, the great majority of time, depending on what they're experiencing, what their priorities are, I usually always start with job costing because immediately as we look at that, I understand if they have their systems organized. I can see how they approach their estimating. We understand a little bit more clear what they're doing related to markup or margin on a project. I can see if they're actually paying attention to what's going on during the project and after the project. There's so many things that you can learn just simply by seeing a job costing dial. If only there was a software that made job costing easier for all of the hardworking construction companies out there. Eric, do you know of one?
I might know of one, but
Okay.
I can tell you just having the tool is one thing. You got to do it. You got to
Oh,
do the
yes, there's
work.
that. There's that. So when it comes to job costing, there's just such a positive ripple effect that happens if you are watching and actually doing your job costing consistently. You become a better estimator. You can't help but become a better estimator if you're watching your job costing, because you're going to get ticked at the number of trips to the lumberyard because you're going to see how much that's actually costing you. You're going to get ticked when you forgot to add in the permit, or you put $300 lazily in the permit thing and it was for $500. You're going to get clarity when it comes to, wow, I actually put a little bit extra in for the finish work and we pretty much hit it. Your estimating is going to get so much quickly better if you're doing your job costing. Job costing has a ripple effect into your sales work. When you know the numbers you need to be bringing in and you are more confident that that is the markup and margin, and I know what my numbers are, you become a more confident salesperson. And a more confident salesperson is a better salesperson. You have a positive ripple effect when you're doing job costing on your project management. When you have clarity on what is actually happening with the numbers side and the impact that not planning for materials days in advance, when you look at that and say, boy, instead of the lumberyard charging me $49 to deliver all of that, look at that. I paid 2 guys to drive there, to get stuck in traffic, to load, to drive back, to unload. That cost me $197 when it could have cost me $49. When you see your job costing clearly, you become a better business person. There's such a crazy ripple effect here. I would say this dial has more impact, especially if your numbers are kind of murky and you're not super confident in your numbers. This is the biggest dial to focus on. Please, please, please lock in on your job costing. But Kyle, my team isn't clocking in and clocking out under the right categories. Fix it. But Kyle, you don't understand. My chart of accounts and QuickBooks and JobTread aren't matching up. I know I've been talking about this for 4 months. Fix it. Set a priority for it. Dig in. You've got to have the tenacity to say, enough. I can't be so murky with this. I can't not know where the money's going. I can't be confused about this. Lock it in. Lock it in. Put effort. The other side of getting your job costing and wrestling with it and getting it organized is a business owner that's so much more in control of their business. Hear me now, remember me later, and hopefully that also emphasizes it a bit. Oh, evidently that's what Eric was talking about with the fire. When I start yelling at people, evidently that is, in his words, fire. Okay,
Hey,
that's what he said.
You need to repeat it again, Kyle.
I know. What else do I need to say about job costing? It's like I had that slide. It's like I had that slide up again. Again, this is the dial that if you don't have your job costing organized, dig into it. I have so many conversations week in, week out, and just over the years when I ask questions like, "Hey, how are you doing with this project? You know, what are you expecting to make in gross profit? What are you expecting your cost to be?" And I see a lot of blank stares, and I'm empathetic. Running a remodeling business, running a contracting business is hard. If you're wondering why it's so hard, it's because it's hard. You're juggling a lot of variables and a lot of things. Running a remodeling business, a contracting business, when you have a good handle on your numbers, is so much easier and so much less frustrating. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's so much better. So hopefully that emphasis in dial number 4 around job costing is maybe the spark you need. Now, Eric put 3 little fires on that. I didn't see anybody else put in the chat box. Kyle, this is my next right thing related to job costing. Go. I need at least 20 of you should be typing that in.
Yeah,
when it comes to job costing, this is what my next step is.
Who's doing it today? Who feels good about how much effort you're putting into job costing? You know, I'd love to see that. I mean, it's, you know, again, like you can learn so much about your numbers, and some people think they want to start off slow. I love Kyle's approach to dive into that first, because, you know, when you have the data, it's going to inform everything else moving forward. That historical data will help you to better estimate everything. If you want to figure out your production rates, then have your guys clocking in and out to specific line items. And then at the end of the job, you can look, hey, I told them to demo, you know, 500 square feet of something. Well, how many hours did it take them? Now you know a production rate. And then you could look at that across the last 3 or 4 jobs. Now you've got a good average that you can use moving forward. But without the data, you're flying blind. It's so important to take the time to do the job costing. And there is no reason to scale your business if you are not a well-oiled and profitable machine. Every job needs to be able to make money, and you got to understand how you're going to do that before you just open up the floodgates and bring in all these leads and sell more jobs. Do the effort, put in the time to do your job costing, and that will help you build a tremendously more successful business.
Love it. I tried to put the 3 fires like you did on there, but I'm not techie enough to know how to do that. I tried to copy and paste it. It wouldn't work.
There's a little emoji icon right there in the chat window.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I see. Oh, look at that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to conduct a webinar. I couldn't find it. Pat said, bringing it up in the production meeting tomorrow. Excellent, Pat. Also, that production meeting should have an agenda. That production meeting on that agenda should have time, an amount of time next to each of the different areas. You should assign somebody during that production meeting to be the timekeeper. Have I made your production meeting tomorrow a lot more effective already? I think so. And also, you should start that meeting not with Pat going, all right, time to start the production meeting. I got something I want to work on related to job costing. That'd be fine, but I'd rather you go around the room and say, hey, let's start by everybody sharing one win or something good that has happened in your life or in business over the last week or over the last 2 weeks. It is a great way to start. Or if you don't have a lot of time at the start, just do a one-word open. One word, how you feeling? Boom, 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 boom.
I
Got
love
it, Pat.
also recognizing someone for any of their outstanding work,
Love it.
contributions. It makes people feel excited to come to your meetings when they know they may get highlighted or showcased in front of the team.
Love it. Cool. Number 5, overhead expense dial. Overhead expenses dial. We're following along as we're going through here. We got our total revenue minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. And then the next section are your overhead expenses. Here's somebody that said, quote unquote, my overhead expenses should be $410,000 in 2024. Here's how I got that. Fill in the blank. That is a business owner that knows their numbers, that has done a little bit of work organizing all of their overhead expenses, and they have clarity on what that looks like. And especially if they start getting into here's how I got that, and I ask them some questions or you ask them some questions and they have answers for that. Your overhead expenses dial is something that you should have a clear handle on. How much are you going to spend in overhead expenses this year? Are you clear with what is and what is not included in that? So for example, if I say, what about your project manager? Is your project manager in your overhead expenses or are they in your cost of goods sold? What about your payroll taxes for your field employees? That's a big line item if you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 field employees. Is your payroll taxes for your field employees in your overhead expenses? What about equipment? Do you have a line item in your overhead expenses for equipment? These are some of the murky areas of it, but these are areas that we need to grapple with and understand. For example, if you have your project manager and they cost you, let's say $80,000 salary plus blah, 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 taxes, etc. Let's say your project manager costs you $100,000 for the year. How do you pay for that $100,000? Are they in overhead expenses or are they in cost of goods sold? Me as a coach, I see it both ways. Frankly, I see it almost probably 75, 80% of the time in overhead expenses and about 25% of the time in cost of goods sold. People have opinions on that. I'm okay either way you do it, so long as you know how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and how you are paying for it. If it is in your overhead expenses, that is part of your markup and margin. Just like how do you pay for marketing and advertising? You pay for that through your markup and margin. You pay that out of your gross profit dollars. For some of you with a project manager, you may have a line item in your estimate that says project management, and you have a cost that you put in there, and that's how you cover that. The big thing here is you need to be clear with all that's included in your overhead expenses, and make sure you understand what that is and that you are charging a markup and margin to cover that, plus still spit out a net profit. Another thing that comes up quite often when we talk about this is related to your owner's salary. Is your owner's salary and overhead expenses? If you only do owner draws, that comes out of your net profit on your profit and loss statement. If you, let's say, maybe are an S Corp, I'm getting a little nerdy, but follow me. If you are an S Corp and you take an owner salary, like an actual paycheck, a W-2 that you get taxes taken out of, I'm going to see that in your overhead expenses. A lot of times that's the case for a lot of folks. So when we look at the overhead expenses, does that include your owner's salary or does it not? We need to know that and we need to be aware of that. Okay. So that's the overhead expenses dial. And then I'm going to touch on one other dial, and then we're going to leave a few minutes here for some Q&A. Does that sound good, Eric? How are we doing on time?
Sounds good.
Miraculous. Okay. 6-1 is the net profit dial. Net profit dial. What comes off of the net profit number on a P&L? I just kind of touched on it. If you are taking owner draws, that is coming out of the net profit. Most of you probably have it set up where the payments on loans, in particular, the principal payments are coming out of net profit. These kind of show up over on the balance sheet. So this is part of knowing your numbers and knowing and having a goal, frankly, for what your net profit dial is. Some of you look at your net profit on your P&L and you go, there's more down there in the net profit number that says 75,000 bucks. I don't think I've had a net profit of 75,000 bucks this first 4 months of the year. But then you think a little bit more and you study your numbers and you become more proficient at it, and you realize, oh, some of my owner draws are coming out of that. Oh, some of those principal payments on that truck and that truck are coming out of that. The net profit dial. More net profit dollars makes you and I happy. 2% net profit, it's no fun. It's miserable. If it continues to be 2%, if it continues to be a drag, there's some people that say, you know what, I gave it the best shot. I don't have any regrets, and it might be better for me, for my stress and health and emotional well-being, to just call it good, or you go fix it, right? But 2% net profit is no fun. It's too tight. There's not a lot of money to invest. Yes, you're hopefully paying yourself an owner's salary and overhead expenses already, but if there's only 2% down there, that is stressful. 8%, nice. Nice. Depending on the size of your business, if you've already paid overhead, you're a nice, reasonable owner's salary and overhead expenses, and you got 8% down there, all right, we're feeling pretty good. 14%, woo, yippee. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. So that's, some people like to ask, you know, what should my net profit be? Well, first, be careful not to compare yourselves to somebody else's, because it takes some digging in to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. Some people are like, I'm at a 15% net profit. Cool. Way to go. How much have you already paid yourself as an owner up to that point? Nothing that comes out of net profit. Well, now 15% is still good, maybe, but it changes the way we look at that a bit. So know what your net profit is and what it isn't, what's included in that, what comes off of that. Study that, dig into that. This is part of knowing your numbers. And then really focus. We need to focus on this dial and how do we increase our net profit dollars. And by the way that we increase our net profit dials is by making all of the adjustments on the other dials that we've already made. You want to improve your net profit dial? Improve your estimating. Dial up your total revenue, dial up your gross profit, dial down your cost of goods sold percentage. You want to increase your net profit dollars? Maybe you need to cut your overhead expenses a little bit and dial that down a little bit, because yes, you're spending $50 a month on that stupid little AI thing that you never use. Why are you spending that? If I use an AI thing, but it could be any miscellaneous software or miscellaneous tool or miscellaneous subscription that you don't use. You know, $50 times 12 is $600. Dial that down, increases net profit. Pay attention to it and see, how do I continue to dial some of these different dials up and down. And another couple thoughts related to the net profit dial. We want to use our net profit dollars wisely. And when I think of that, it means things like the following. Contribute towards retirement. I don't know. I'm getting a little bit older. I just turned 41. I'm not as old as my wife. She's 42. She just turned 42. And I'm noticing, and just in my coaching, that I have a lot more clients over the last 3, 4, 5 years talking about retirement. And I look at that, and so many of them, like most everybody that is saving towards retirement goals, I like to say things like, man, I wish I would have done a little bit more back in this year and back in that year. I wish I would have taken this a little bit more seriously. This is a great area to use some net profit dollars. Maybe bonusing some employees, adding an employee benefit. Maybe the purchases of equipment when needed. Not because, well, I kind of need a truck. Maybe not. Only when needed. If it's near the tail end of the year, paying some of your 2025 expenses in 2024. Eric will happily take your annual JobTread payment on December 27th. He'll take that. You already know you're going to pay it next year. That could reduce some taxable income. Sometimes that's just kicking the can down the road, but we'll do that a little bit. And then sometimes, this is probably the most important one, pay the taxes and strengthen the savings account. When I see a remodeler that is finally dialing in their numbers and producing a good net profit after years of kind of mediocrity, and they're finally getting a nice, strong savings account, and they're doing $2 million of revenue, and they got about $200,000 in kind of their retained earnings or their cash flow that's really theirs. And then I see them, they finally hit that, and then I see them pull up in an $80,000 truck that they really didn't need. I'm ticked. Well, my CPA told me that this would help alleviate some tax dollars. Yes, it did. But it also drained your bank account from 200 down, down, down. Sometimes it makes sense to pay the taxes and strengthen and keep your savings account up. That's an opinion of mine. There's your net profit dial. So estimating dial, total revenue dial, gross profit dial, job costing dial, overhead expenses dial, and net profit dial. I would love some questions, and I would also love if you can do a little bit of both. What dials are you going to focus on, and what is your next right thing to do? We've already captured some of that, so I feel pretty good about that because our goal was to get some clarity on this and hopefully to take some action. But feel free to type in maybe your next right thing. And then I will also leave this on the screen. If you use that little QR code, I think it's, let's see what it says here. It's several links. There's a little call or text us. My email address is on there. Facebook group called Remodelers Community is one of the links. It's a great Facebook group. Lots of great conversation going on there. You can go to our website, fill out my contact form if you want to talk a little bit further. I've got a lot of group-based and one-on-one training and whatnot. This is right up my alley of what I train on. So there you go.
That's awesome, Kyle. Definitely a lot of great thought-provoking points that you bring up there. And again, I just want to encourage everyone, like if some of those things felt a little foreign to you, may have gone over your head, you're a little unsure, a little murky about, I mean, again, now you know where you ought to spend some time, invest some time into trying to learn more of these things, whether it's connecting with Kyle one-on-one, connecting with your CPA, your bookkeeper, connecting with other business owners. Like don't just keep going not knowing and not understanding. You've got to take the time to learn and understand these things, because this can be the difference between building a mediocre business, a good business, and a great business. And we're here to help you all build great businesses. So again, I think, Kyle, you brought up some really, really great points. These are great dials. You dialed it in really nicely for everyone. And
cool.
I'm also curious to hear what everyone's takeaways are here and what their action steps are going to be.
Ooh, we got some follow-up proposal meetings. Clint said in the P&L review, adding in owner draws, vehicle payments as deductions to net profit. So, that if you're not doing that right now, Clint, that's just going to give you more clarity on where everything's really kind of coming in for you. That's good.
And there's not always like just one right answer here. Like, again, some of the stuff, it's a little bit of an art, not always a full science here. And so again, you really got to understand it to figure out what is best for your business and your situation.
Yeah. Anu said better templates. So going back to where we started with estimating, time spent on your estimating and estimate templates is time very, very well spent. There's kind of $10 an hour, $100 an hour, and $1,000 an hour work that you can be doing in your business. Templates for your estimating is $1,000 work. It's very valuable work.
Yeah, it sets you up to scale. You can bring other people in, train them on how you want them to estimate a job, and they can do it as close to how you would have done it, when you set that up.
Yeah, Pat's kind of mentioning it's also a sales tool, our templates. If I'm meeting with a prospect and I show the level of detail and the scope of work, how our selections process works, I look at that and I go, man, this is not their first rodeo. They are organized, they are polished, they got their stuff together, and that builds value. If we're looking the same, talking the same, and acting the same as other competitors, then you're just competing on price. And price is a terrible place to compete. There's always someone willing to go out of business sooner than you. That's a funny one.
Kyle, I want to remind you about Beth's comment earlier up top. She said we ran into problems because we estimated several jobs based on our needed profit margin. And while in the middle of the projects, our overhead skyrocketed. We lost money very, very fast. It's been a struggle to climb out of the hole, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's got some clarity on that. And, if we're looking at it and we're going, there's several things happening. One is our total revenue, the dollars coming in. One is coming in and seeing what our actual gross profit is. Sometimes in this case, Beth, you may have sold it at a good profit margin and then had slippage and things that took that expected gross profit margin down, and that hurt. And then you're kind of going, man, we're busy. If we sign this and this and this, I need some help on the estimate. I need some help on project management. And you added some overhead. And now all of a sudden, if things didn't sign, plus we had slippage, plus our overhead went up, all of a sudden, bam, it kind of hits you. But what also I'm reading in this, and Beth's part of my Remodelers community group, it sounds like that was also quite a light bulb moment in a lot of ways, where you have kind of turned the table and gone, all right, never again am I going to get in that predicament. Never again am I going to kind of waltz into kind of sort of knowing my numbers. We're going to be a lot wiser as we move forward. So that's also part of what I know you're working on.
And Kyle, you talked about also having, a revenue goal for the year, and then kind of breaking that into a month by month goal. I mean, I think on the same token, in that same kind of annual budget that everybody should be creating, you should also look at what, you're projecting your COGS to be, your gross profit, and your overhead. At the end of the day, like, one easy way to do it, sure, you could divide by 12, but like if you have last year's numbers, and you can look and you can try to take into account seasonality and say, I realize my summer months were higher than my fall, or higher than my spring, or lower, and so you can take that into account. But like, just like with Beth's situation, I think it's very important that you go into every month and every quarter and every year understanding what your overhead should be. You need to know, based on when you're going to hit certain thresholds, with sales, with gross profit, with the number of projects that you're taking on, when you need to hire additional personnel, or when when some of your other overhead costs are going to come into play. And so
Yep, no doubt.
taking the time to build that annual budget and really try to model out, what your business is going to look like for a year. And again, you're going to have 1,000 assumptions in there, and that's fine. But at least now you can compare your estimates and your budget to your actuals. And so the next year you can improve and take that learning into account and try to build an even better model. But that's so important to you
Yep.
can't fly blind to build a successful business. Like, you got to take the time to build out these budgets and these models and know your numbers.
Yeah. There's a reason that every business coach that's ever served the construction industry has used these 3 words: know your numbers. And this is the heart. What we covered today is the heart of that. Wonderful. Should we go get an afternoon cup of coffee now, Eric, and recharge for the rest of the day?
Oh man, I'm fired up. I'm ready to
Oh.
go. You want to do it again? Want to go for another
I mean,
hour?
I could, but I have one more coaching call today.
Oh, and you got
with
the baby raccoon to deal with.
Yeah, well, yeah, I haven't even looked at my phone. I've been locked in. We'll see. Hopefully Mama Raccoon didn't. I have a feeling they probably went around the house, went in, and just avoided it, which was probably the best move.
Awesome. Well, look, Kyle, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you got meetings coming up, but, just again, really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to share these, these key dials that, that you look at and evaluate for every one of your coaching clients. And really just, these are some great best practices to share for everyone to get them thinking. But, I highly recommend, if you're not part of Kyle's Facebook group, Remodelers Community, it's an awesome group, got lots of very, very experienced, very seasoned, remodelers in there. You got a, it's a tremendous resource to be part of. And, we got a lot of overlap between our 2 groups, but definitely reach out to Kyle. If you really resonate with what he's saying, what he's thinking, Kyle is a phenomenal coach. I have seen firsthand the impact that he has made on countless businesses, and I couldn't recommend him more. I couldn't recommend his group and his community more. It is a great place to be. It's a great way to learn how you can build a much better, more successful, more scalable business. So, thank you, Kyle, for continuing to bring the fire. I knew you would. You didn't let me down again. So, just we appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining in.